Hello again. In this video, I am going to replace the ballast on this vehicle. This car has HID lighting, and so it will have HID electronic equipment. If you have HID lights and one of the headlights are not working, the ballast could be the issue. For this model car, it has 2 ballast and 2 igniters, one for each headlight. The ballast is located underneath the headlamp, and in order to get to it, the headlamp will need to be removed. So let's get started. To start off, we will need to remove the front bumper. Since I am going to remove the driver's side headlight, I do not need to completely remove the bumper from the car. I can just remove part of it, just so I can have enough space for the headlamp housing to come out. So I'm going to partially remove the driver's side bumper by simply just slightly moving it out of the way. There are clips which hold down a plastic piece connected to the bumper. Be very careful not to break these retainer clips. There's clips near the top and clips near the bottom, and all of these retainer clips need to be removed so that this plastic piece that connects to the bumper can come off. This is a plastic piece or cover that will also expose all of the other parts that need to be removed so that the headlight housing can also be removed. So now that the retainer clips for the top plastic piece or cover is off, I am going to start removing the clips for the splash cover at the bottom. There is a 10mm bolt holding part of the cover down. Removing this bolt is straightforward and is removed just like any ordinary bolt is removed. Once the bolt is removed, part of the cover can be slightly removed just so that it can be out of the way for the bumper removal. There is a little bit of plastic bending and effort involved when slightly removing this plastic cover. Once that part of the splash cover is off, it doesn't end there. There are more retainer clips to be removed so that the splash cover can come off. The cover at the bottom also doesn't need to be completely removed. We just need to remove it to detach it from the bumper so that the bumper can be removed, or in this case, slightly removed, because remember, we are not completely removing the bumper because we are just removing the driver's side headlamp housing. This clip that you see right now is not the original retainer clip. I don't remember, but I might have broke it, or it broke by itself while I was removing the original retainer clip at a previous time. What's important is just keep in mind that your clips may look different. There's one screw at the far side of the bumper, and it's an important screw which plays a vital role in holding the bumper. Just go ahead and remove that screw. Once the covers are off and the screws are off, the bumper is ready to come off. With the bumper partially removed, the brackets surrounding the headlamp housing will be exposed. To remove the brackets surrounding the housing, there is a set of bolts located on the right side of the housing. These bolts require a 10mm socket to be removed. There is also another set of bolts located right underneath the headlamp housing. These bolts also require a 10mm socket for removal. These bolts are located in a tighter space compared to the location of the previous bolts. Since these bolts are a little bit more harder to get to, I used a socket extension so that I can reach the bolts underneath the housing. After the bolts located near the far right are removed, the bolts located underneath the housing are removed. There is a bolt located near the middle of the bumper. This bolt is connected to the same bracket, and it also needs to be removed so that the brackets surrounding the housing can be moved. This bolt is really easy to remove. It's not in a tight space like the other ones, and it's right in the open. So now that the bolts for the brackets surrounding the housing are off, now the bolts that hold the actual headlamp housing need to come off. There are 2 bolts holding down the housing and are also easy to remove because of its location. These bolts are also in the open. The housing cannot come off just yet. The housing will need some effort to be removed, so playing around with it to remove it might be needed. But before doing the headlamp housing removal, the lights need to be unplugged. Just for additional information, HID lights require a much higher voltage to emit light than regular halogen lights, so be very careful when touching these connections and lights. Unplug the car battery if possible. There's going to be 3 connectors connecting to the lights to the housing. Again, they are in a tight space and the connectors may be stuck on the connectors, so do the best you can to remove these connections. So now once the housing is removed from the car, the ballast will be exposed and can be removed. It is located underneath the headlamp housing. There are some screws holding it down. Once the screws are out, there are also some wiring going into the housing. A cap will need to be removed so that the unit can come off. To remove the cap that I mentioned earlier, there is only one screw holding it. I used a needle nose pliers to remove the screw holding down the cap because I do not have the tool needed to remove the screw. I believe the screw requires a type of Torx screwdriver. And once the screw is removed, the cap does need to be turned for the cap to come off and expose the wiring. There's a rubber plastic piece holding the wire. There's wire that leads into the housing, and this rubber piece kind of separates the wire from the outside, leading into the inside of the housing. This piece will have to be removed so that the connector located inside of the housing can come off. I used some pliers to remove it. It's on there pretty tight, so a little bit of effort may be needed to take it out. Once the rubber piece is out, the wire can slip right through to remove the rest of the wiring. Just disconnect the connector and pull on one side of the wire and it should come out. Once the old ballast is out, the new one can be installed. To summarize everything, the bumper had to be removed, some brackets, and a bunch of screws. I would say the bumper is probably the part that is in the way the most, and also the brackets underneath the housing. Once all of this stuff is removed, everything is pretty straightforward. Then just remove the headlamp housing screws and wiggle out the housing. I hope that you guys found this video helpful and enjoyed this video. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a good day.